They said he was guilty before he ever opened his mouth. Neighbors whispered, friends turned away, and even family stopped answering calls. One lie was repeated so many times, it started sounding like truth. But lies have a weakness. They collapse when faced with patience and proof. This is a story of a man the world judged, and the justice that finally spoke back. In a quiet suburban town in Australia, where everyone knows your name and your past never stays buried, lived Daniel Harris, an ordinary bloke with an ordinary life. He worked hard, paid his bills, and believed that if you stayed honest, life would treat you fairly. But all it took was one accusation, one well-spoken lie, to turn his entire world upside down. This isn't just a story about law. It's a story about reputation, silence, and the heavy cost of being misunderstood. It began quietly, almost harmlessly, the way most destructive lies do. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting match in the office, no warning that Daniel's life was about to fracture. It started with a meeting request that popped up on his screen late Friday afternoon, marked *urgent style. He assumed it was about deadlines or budgets. He straightened his shirt, grabbed his notebook, and walked in without fear, because honest people rarely expect traps. Inside the room sat two managers and a woman from HR, all wearing the same tight expressions, the kind that pretend to be neutral but already know the ending. Before Daniel could sit properly, the words fell like stones. There's been a serious allegation against you. He laughed, just for a second, thinking it was some kind of misunderstanding. That laugh died quickly when he saw no one smile back. They said his name had come up in an internal complaint. They said money was missing. They said documents had been altered. They didn't say allegedly for long. Each sentence leaned further away from uncertainty and closer to judgment. Daniel tried to speak, but their minds were already ahead of him, racing toward conclusions they felt relieved to reach. It was easier to blame one man than to admit a system had failed. By Monday morning, the lie had legs. By Tuesday, it was running. Colleagues stopped meeting his eyes in the corridor. Conversations hushed when he entered the lunchroom. Phones stopped ringing. He noticed how quickly people protect themselves when fear is involved. No one wanted to be associated with the accused bloke. No one wanted their name whispered next. What shocked Daniel most wasn't the accusation. It was how easily it was accepted. No evidence had been shared, no explanation offered. Yet the story was repeated with confidence. I heard he was dodgy. Always thought there was something off about him. The human mind loves patterns, even false ones. The lie gave people something neat to believe, something that made sense of discomfort. Within days, his access card was deactivated. His work email vanished. Years of dedication were erased with a single policy click. When he tried to defend himself, he was told to wait for the investigation. But investigations take time, and reputations don't. His name, once spoken casually, now carried a warning tone. At home, the lie followed him. His neighbor, who used to wave every morning, suddenly found the ground more interesting. At the local cafe, the barista hesitated before serving him, as if guilt might be contagious. Daniel realized something terrifying. Truth wasn't required for judgment. Repetition was enough. Nights became unbearable. He replayed every interaction in his head, wondering where it all went wrong. He questioned his memory, his tone, his past decisions. Lies have a cruel way of forcing the innocent to defend themselves not only to others, but to their own minds. He began to feel like he was standing in quicksand. The more he tried to explain, the deeper he sank. The person who started the lie spoke confidently, convincingly, and with just enough detail to sound believable. People trust confidence more than facts. And once trust is given to the wrong voice, truth struggles to be heard. Daniel learned that being quiet, respectful, and decent doesn't protect you when someone louder decides to rewrite your story. The worst part was the speed. There was no pause, no moment where someone said, let's hear his side. The lie filled the silence before truth had a chance to arrive. And once filled, silence became agreement. focus on clearing his name, too certain that once people heard the truth, everything would snap back into place. He told himself it was temporary, that mates were busy, that everyone needed time to process things. But days passed, and the quiet didn't lift. It thickened. The phone that once buzzed with weekend plans now stayed face down and still. Group chats went quiet, not because the conversation ended, but because he had been quietly removed. No explanation, no goodbye, just absence. Daniel would unlock his screen over and over, as if staring at it long enough might bring sound back into his life. He tried reaching out first. He sent messages that were polite, careful, almost apologetic, even though he'd done nothing wrong. Asterisk, hey mate, just wanted to check in. Asterisk. Some messages were read and never answered. Others weren't opened at all. A few replies came back stiff and distant, full of phrases like asterisk, hope it all works out, asterisk, words that sounded supportive but felt like a door gently closing. What hurt most was how isolation rewrote familiar faces. People he'd shared, laughed with, now avoided eye contact. A friend he'd helped through a messy divorce crossed the street rather than walk past him. Daniel stood there, watching backs turned, wondering when loyalty had become conditional. At family dinners, the air grew heavy. Conversation stopped when he entered the room, then restarted awkwardly about weather or television. His mother tried to defend him, but even her voice carried uncertainty, as if she was afraid to sound naive. His brother, usually blunt and loyal, finally said what others were thinking. Asterisk, if everyone's saying it, there must be something to it. Asterisk, that sentence landed harder than the accusation itself, because when doubt comes from strangers, it stings. When it comes from blood, it cuts. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just nodded, feeling something inside him fracture quietly. Nights became the hardest. Without noise, without distraction, his thoughts grew loud. He lay awake replaying moments from his past, searching for something, anything, that could explain why this had happened. Lies are powerful because they force the innocent to interrogate themselves. He began to wonder if being too trusting, too quiet, too agreeable had somehow made him an easy target. Loneliness changed the way time moved. Hours stretched endlessly, days blurred together. He stopped shaving. Meals became whatever was quickest. He avoided mirrors because he didn't recognize the man looking back. Thinner, tired, carrying shame that wasn't his. There were moments when he questioned whether fighting was worth it. The effort to prove his innocence felt enormous compared to the ease with which the lie had destroyed him. It would have been simpler to disappear, to accept a label and retreat from the world. After all, if everyone had already decided who he was, what difference would truth make? But then there were small moments, cruel ones, that reminded him what giving up would cost. A job rejection that came without an interview. A landlord who suddenly needed extra assurances. A stranger's stay that lingered a second too long. The lie wasn't just isolating him emotionally. It was shaping his future. Daniel learned that isolation isn't just about being alone. It's about being unseen, unheard, treated as if your presence makes others uncomfortable. It's about knowing you could scream the truth at the top of your lungs and still be met with polite distance. And yet, somewhere beneath the exhaustion and doubt, something stubborn survived. A quiet refusal to let this version of him be the final one. The silence around him was crushing, but it also stripped life back to its core. Without applause, without approval, without comfort, Daniel began to understand something raw and real. If he didn't stand with himself, no one else would. So he sat in that silence. He felt it fully. He let it hurt. And slowly, painfully, he stopped waiting for others to believe him. Instead, he began preparing for the moment when the truth would no longer need permission to be heard. Giving up didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It crept in quietly, disguising itself as exhaustion, as practicality, as a sensible choice. Daniel woke one morning and realized he hadn't thought about proving his innocence at all. He'd been thinking about how to survive with the damage already done. That frightened him more than the accusation ever had. Because when a man stops believing his truth matters, the lie has already won halfway. He sat at the small kitchen table, staring at unpaid bills and rejection emails, feeling the weight of a future shrinking day by day. Friends were gone. Work was gone. His name carried a shadow. Every option seemed blocked by the same invisible wall, *trust star. And trust, once broken, even unfairly, is painfully hard to rebuild. There were moments when quitting felt logical. Why fight a system that had already decided? Why spend money he didn't have? Energy he no longer felt, chasing justice that might arrive too late to fix anything. The world had moved on. Maybe he should too. Maybe accepting the lie would hurt less than constantly running into it. One night, the thought came clearly for the first time. What if I just let this be the story? Not because it was true, but because resisting it was breaking him. That thought scared him enough to sit upright in bed, heart racing. He realized that if he stopped now, the lie wouldn't just ruin his past. It would define his future. Every job, every relationship, every introduction would carry the same unspoken question. And the worst part wasn't that others would believe it. The worst part was that, slowly, he might too. The decision to fight didn't come from confidence. It came from anger, quiet, controlled, and deeply personal. Anger at being erased without a voice. Anger at how easy it had been for others to discard him. Anger at the idea that truth only mattered when it was convenient. Daniel began small, painfully small. He opened his old laptop and started going through emails he hadn't touched in months. At first, it felt pointless. Endless threads, forgotten attachments, dates that blurred together. But then patterns emerged. Timelines, messages that didn't align with the accusation. Details no one had bothered to look for because they'd already chosen what to believe. Each discovery was both hope and heartbreak. Hope because the truth was there. Heartbreak because it had always been there. Ignored. He reached out to a solicitor, not a flashy one, not a confident promise maker. Just someone honest about how hard this would be. The cost made Daniel's stomach drop. He hesitated before signing anything, aware that this fight might drain him financially as well as emotionally. But for the first time in months, he felt like he was moving forward instead of shrinking. The process was humiliating at times, explaining himself over and over, reliving the accusation in cold, legal language, watching people raise eyebrows when they heard his name. Justice doesn't rush to meet the wounded. It asks them to prove they deserve it. There were setbacks, evidence requests denied, calls not returned, days when nothing moved at all. Daniel learned that fighting for truth isn't dramatic, it's tedious. It's paperwork, patience, and persistence when no one is watching. Still, he kept going. Not because he believed he would win, but because stopping felt like surrendering his identity. Each document he gathered, each statement he wrote, became an act of defiance. Not loud, not heroic, just steady. He noticed something unexpected along the way. As he fought externally, something inside him shifted. The shame began to loosen its grip. He stopped apologizing for existing. He stood a little straighter. He spoke with less hesitation. The act of choosing himself, again and again, rebuilt a confidence the lie had tried to steal. Daniel understood then that this fight wasn't just about clearing his name. It was about proving to himself that he was worth defending, even when the odds were unfair, even when the outcome was uncertain. And on the nights when doubt returned, because it always did, he reminded himself of one simple truth. Giving up would be easy, but living under a lie would be harder. So he kept fighting, not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. And sometimes, that's the strongest choice a person can make. In the end, the lie spoke loudly, but only for a while. Truth waited, steady and patient, until the world was ready to listen. Daniel learned that justice doesn't rush, but it never forgets. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't shout, it settles everything.